pleasure to welcome today to my show Mr. Ethan Thoburn, a young activist and prominent figure within the Reform UK party, which was founded by Nigel Farage. Thoburn is well known for his active involvement in British politics. He is a strong advocate for reforming British institutions and for adopting a more sovereign approach for foreign policy. Through his direct speeches and firm positions on major political issues, he has successfully captured the attention of both the public and the media. Hello, Mr. Thoburn. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'd like to start off by asking what role does Brexit play in the current identity of Reform UK?
Oh, absolutely huge. I mean, I think one of the things that we hold as one of our cornerstones is the fact that we decided to leave the European Union in 2016. Obviously, Nigel Farage was the key player in that. If it wasn't for Nigel Farage, we probably wouldn't have left the European Union. But I do think that even now it is still such a big issue. There are still so many things that need sorting now that we've left the European Union. Unfortunately, the last Conservative government didn't deliver Brexit, despite what Boris Johnson may have you believe. There is still a lot to be done, a lot of opportunities to be exploited. We've just seen the US trade deal, UK-US trade deal, which does include some tariffs, but it also includes a lot of really beneficial points for the UK and has much better trading terms from our perspective than the trade deal that the EU have with the United States. So I think there are a lot of areas which we can be improving on, that we can really capitalize on the Brexit benefits. But I also think that we have been able to make our own decisions. We've been able to exploit some of those Brexit benefits by signing such a trade deal. And I really do think that there are a huge number of other opportunities which could be taken upon if Reform UK were to come into government at the next general election.
What further steps are necessary to complete Brexit, as your campaign suggests?
I think one of the ways that we could do that, and given there's been such a lot of attention drawn to this in the last few years, is obviously we have a big migration crisis, certainly an illegal migration crisis. We are now at about 1.3 million net migrants coming to the UK. About 55,000 of those are illegal, and those are just the ones that we know about. So there is a huge number of migrants, legal and illegal, coming to the UK. Unfortunately, a lot of those do not want to work. They come here with the wrong intentions. They come here from different cultures, which perhaps don't share the same values as British values. And one of the things that Brexit allows us to do is it allows us to control our borders. It allows us to take back control of our immigration policy. And unfortunately, we've not done that so far. One of the big things that we are going to be looking at doing, and one of the things on Monday in the House of Commons, we actually have an amendment to the Borders Bill, which is the Asylum, Immigration and Borders Bill, going through the House of Commons. We have an amendment to deport anybody who arrives illegally on the shores. That's what we believe in. We believe in deportations for anybody who comes here illegally. We believe that we should be leaving the ECHR because it prevents us from doing that. And what is being the case for some time now is left-wing activists and left-wing lawyers have been blocking deportations through the courts, using the ECHR, using human rights law for the purposes that it wasn't intended to be used for, to keep people in this country who have came here illegally and who, in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, wish harm on the United Kingdom. So I think one of the great things about leaving the European Union is we can now leave the ECHR. We can stop unelected bureaucratic judges and European judges deciding on whether we can or can't have somebody in our country. It's our country, and we should be in control of who comes in, who comes out. And I think that is a huge opportunity since leaving the European Union is that we are actually able to do that. Unfortunately, it's not been taken upon yet. The government has put forward some fairly weak measures. We had the last government's Rwanda plan, which wasn't in principle a bad idea, but in practice was never going to work. So I think now we have to increase the deterrence. We have to increase from a threat of deportation to actually deporting people who are here illegally and who should not be here. So I think that is one of the things that if Reform UK do get into government at the next general election, it's one of the first things, because on the doorsteps over the last few weeks and months, when we've been campaigning for local government elections, the one thing that we hear on every other doorstep is immigration, immigration, immigration. And if we don't solve that illegal problem first, there is no way that we can implement a real practical immigration policy. So we need to get illegal immigration right. We need to get illegal migration sorted, and then we can start focusing on everything else. And we can start looking at moving towards a more points-based system, which allows us to bring in the people that we need, whether that be on long-term or short-term temporary contracts. But what we shouldn't be doing is what this government has just announced in the last few days, which is a trade deal with India, which is very good. We do a lot of trade with India. We don't do enough trade with India, in my opinion. They are a key ally to us, a key Commonwealth ally. But despite the trade value of this being about £5 billion, it is not good for the UK, because it essentially allows companies to hire Indian workers at a much cheaper rate than they can hire UK-born workers, or from anywhere else in the world for that matter. And there are a lot of commentators who say that, you know, we have this arrangement with several other countries. However, the difference is that it is a reciprocal arrangement, but we are expecting a lot more Indian workers to be coming to the UK than we are British-born workers moving to work in India. So it is a big problem. The government has removed employer national insurance contributions for Indian workers for the first 2 years. So it makes it about £10,000 to £20,000 cheaper per worker to appoint an Indian national than it does to appoint a UK national. That's not what trade deals should be about. It's not what Brexit is about, and it's certainly not what we believe is the future of global trade and our global diplomatic relationships.
Do you believe, in your opinion, that the UK has lost anything important from leaving the European Union?
I think there are arguments to be made on both sides, but I think in general we have a lot of positives from leaving the European Union. As I've said many times before, and will continue to say, yes, we might make some mistakes since we've left the European Union, but they're our mistakes. They're our politicians making those mistakes, and we can hold them to account through our democratic institutions in the UK. The problem with being in the European Union is that you have unelected bureaucrats who nobody's ever heard of making decisions on behalf of us, who often believe in land without borders, which is something that we certainly don't believe in. Once you lose control of your borders, once you lose control of your heritage, and indeed once you lose control of your money, then that is when the nation state fails to exist. And I think that is one of the most important things, is pride in one's nation state and actually fighting for one's nation state as well, because our culture and values mean so much to British people. And, you know, just because we've left the European Union doesn't mean that we can't cooperate, you know, but we love France because it's France. We love Germany because it's German. You know, we love Romania because it's Romania. That is the thing, is that the key point here is that we are a nation state again. Parliament in London is sovereign, and we can hold our politicians to account. If we can't get rid of politicians, then we don't live in a democratic world. And that is the situation with the European Commission, the EU Commission, because you can't get rid of the president of the EU Commission. It's run in general, the EU as a whole, by unelected bureaucrats who've never had a proper job in their life. They've never run a business. They don't care about countries. They don't care about people in their countries. I mean, all you've got to do is look at in 2009 when Greece was reduced pretty much to a protectorate of the European Union. So I think leaving the European Union, it certainly has a knock-on effect on trade. You know, we've seen the value of sterling go down, but I think what is the price to pay for sovereignty? And that is what we have back since leaving the European Union. We can make our own decisions. We can still have very good, close relationships with the EU and with the countries within the EU. But now that we have left, we can decide our own trade deals like we have with the US. And again, even with the India trade deal, it's a trade deal which we can hold our politicians to account. And I believe the general public will hold the Labour Party to account for this bad trade deal with India. So I think that is the key point to take away from all of this, is that, yes, some things have changed since leaving the European Union. As I said earlier in this conversation, I don't think that successive UK governments, whether that be Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, Keir Starmer, anybody has made the full use of Brexit and are exploiting or have exploited the Brexit benefits to the level that we believe they can be exploited. There is still a lot of issues to do with fishing rights, which we need to get sorted. There is still a problem in Northern Ireland, which is basically a part of the United Kingdom, which is now stuck in the middle between being in the UK and in the European Union and getting the worst of all worlds. So we do need to solve the Northern Ireland Protocol and the Windsor Framework, which leaves the people in Northern Ireland, who are quite often some of the most patriotic and some of the most pro-British people that you can find, and they're being cut off from the mainland, but also as well being cut off from the European Union. So there are a lot of things that need to be solved still, and there are a lot of benefits from Brexit that can still be exploited. But we have a long way to go, and we have a plan in government to start exploiting those benefits. We've been calling for removing the VAT on SPF products, on sunscreen, Skin Cancer Awareness Month as we speak. And that is one of the Brexit benefits. The European Union insists that SPF is a luxury product. I mean, of course it isn't a luxury product. We can take off the VAT now, and we should indeed do that. It's a Brexit benefit, and it's an easy win for the government, and they need to do that. But there seems to be some reluctancy to actually engage with Brexit benefits and actually really go forward with a pro-Britain, pro-UK, pro-business agenda.
Now, how is George seen in the UK after he won the first round of the elections in Romania?
Oh, very positive. Certainly with how I've seen the reaction in political circles. What a lot of people see is they see a politician standing up for his country. They see a politician who very clearly loves his country. They see somebody who has a vision for his country. Very much as what's happening across all of Europe, actually, is somebody that is proud of where they come from, is proud of their nation, going back to that nation state point that I was making earlier on. He is somebody that has support of people from all different backgrounds, of all different demographics, of all different age groups. And we're seeing this all across Europe. We're seeing this with Marine Le Pen in France. We're seeing this with Giorgia Meloni in Italy. We're seeing this with Nigel Farage in the United Kingdom, and indeed with George Simeon in Romania. It is huge that politicians like this are eventually gaining traction, and we are finally seeing a rise in people who are willing to put their head above the parapet and actually say, yes, I'm proud of where I come from. Yes, we've made some mistakes. Yes, we might make some mistakes, but I'm proud of where I come from. I believe in this country. I believe in its people. And this is my country. These are my people. And I'm going to do the absolute best for them. And there is something very inspirational about that attitude. And it is breaking down that European superstate model, which the European Union have been trying to impose on all of our nations for the last 20 or 30 years since it's been founded. So I think it's a very positive response, and hopefully the momentum continues, and hopefully that we will see an uplift in people accepting these politicians as mainstream because there is nothing controversial about them on the most part all across Europe. And there is real traction for people who want to stand up for their country. And I think that's only a good thing.
Can you tell us more about the Rearm Europe conference that was held at the Parliament of Romania 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I mean, it was very, very interesting conference, very, very interesting in what was being said, because again, it is very inspiring to hear people talk so positively about their country, people talking so positively about what they have planned and what they see as a vision. And that is what we really need is real visionaries who can lead their nations, who can lead their people to prosperity. You can't talk your country down and expect the people to be behind you and expect it to be prosperous. It's just not how psychology works, if nothing else, certainly not how politics works. So I think hearing what everybody had to say, we do need to have a good relationship across all of Europe. We need to embrace our European neighbours, but at the same time, we don't need to sign away all of our sovereignty to a European defence army, which would be a total disaster. Because who are you fighting for? In the UK, we fight for king and country. We don't fight for some bureaucrat in Brussels. And I think that feeling is very similar all across Europe, is that you fight for your country, you don't fight for an institution, which is what the European Union is. So should we have defence cooperation? Absolutely. Should we work together as NATO? Absolutely. Should we be setting up a European Union army or a European Union defence force? Absolutely not. So I think it's very important that we talk about the importance of nation states, to talk about national identities, whilst also having a very good and cooperative relationship with the people who are close by.
What is Reform UK's official position on the concept of European strategic autonomy as promoted by France and reinforced through the European Union's strategic compass?
I mean, we would never ever support and never ever sign up to a European defence pact in the way that it's being proposed currently. As I say, I believe that we should have good relationships with our European neighbours, but I don't think we should be signing away our sovereignty, certainly not the sovereignty of our military. We have a very, very good training program for our military. We have very, very good cooperation already with our European and NATO allies, but we certainly shouldn't be signing away our sovereignty of our armed forces. That's not something that Reform UK would ever commit to doing.
Do you believe the Rearm Europe initiative represents a realistic alternative to US military support through NATO, or does it risk undermining transatlantic solidarity?
I think now that we have President Trump and the White House in the US, I think there will certainly be a bigger burden on European nations to pay for the defense of Europe. I think the United States will certainly be looking at this and saying, well, why should we be paying to defend Europe? It's certainly what President Trump said in his last presidency. And I totally get that. I don't see, if I was an American citizen, as an American taxpayer, I don't think I would be too happy in the US footing most of the bill for defense contributions in Europe when food prices are through the roof, gas prices are through the roof. So I totally understand President Trump's America First agenda, but I think he also understands the importance of having a US defense presence in Europe and to work with European allies when it comes to defense, when it comes to military cooperation, when it comes to intelligence cooperation. And I think that there is a huge opportunity for the US to have a very hands-on role in Europe without footing the bill of billions and billions of pounds, whilst countries like Germany put next to nothing in the pot. So I think the European Strategic Defence Initiative, I think is a way forward. I think it should be spearheaded by individual nations. I don't think it should be a European Union project in terms of the centralisation of that. It should be done through willing cooperation between European nations with deals that work for each other. I don't think it should be centralised, and I think that if it does become that, it will be a total disaster, as we've seen with most European initiatives, with European Union initiatives. So I think it's a very interesting question on finding a right balance between support from the United States and also as well working together with other European allies.
Do you support the idea of European troops to Ukraine under the banner of a voluntary coalition? What could such a move pose to European security?
I think the key thing with Ukraine is that we need to find a peace deal. The war has gone on for far too long, and there needs to be a peaceful solution there. That shouldn't be peace at any cost, but I think it's very important that we find a peaceful solution. We shouldn't be talking about putting boots on the ground. I certainly wouldn't support sending British troops to Ukraine. I think what we need to do is find a peaceful solution. And I think with President Trump and the White House, I think that is totally possible. I think the European Union has really fallen down recently in the peace negotiations over Ukraine. But I very much trust President Trump to find a peace deal. We saw in Rome for Pope Francis's funeral that he met with President Zelensky. And I do think that there will be a peace deal ironed out in the coming weeks. I certainly hope so, and that is my personal wish.
Now, has Reform UK ever faced efforts to be excluded from the electoral process due to its pro-Brexit stance? And now I ask this because in Romania, there's a very high risk of being thrown out of the electoral race if you dare to have a negative stance on the European Union.
Thankfully, we haven't, although the establishment really don't want us to succeed. They are trying absolutely everything to stop us. They haven't quite got to the point of excluding us from running in elections. I sincerely hope that that isn't the case. We have a rich history of democracy in the United Kingdom. The Brexit vote in 2016 was the biggest democratic exercise in the history of the United Kingdom. 17.4 million people voting to leave the European Union that day on the 23rd of June. So I sincerely hope that that isn't ever the case where Reform UK excluded. We have certainly seen every single effort possible from the Labour Party and the Conservative Party to downplay what Reform UK stands for. They have lied about us. They've lied about Nigel Farage, and they have certainly tried to pull out all stops to ensure that we don't win. However, we did win, and we won by some margin last Thursday. We won 677 council seats, despite early opinion polls only showing that we would win 400. We won 2 mayoralties in local government, which was absolutely huge, and we came very, very close, within 1,000 votes of winning another 2. We, of course, won a monumental parliamentary by-election in Runcorn and Helsby by just 6 votes, which is a tiny majority. I think it's the smallest majority in by-election history. So the Labour Party tried everything to stop us from winning that election. They tried to say that some of the votes weren't valid because they were smudged. They said that some of them were double marked, which of course was nonsense. So we won by a small majority, but that majority is going to get even bigger at the next general election. We've got a fantastic MP in Sarah Pochin, who is already getting to work at standing up for Runcorn and Helsby and really fighting for the UK with the rest of the Reform UK MPs. And we have real momentum behind us now. We're pretty much at around or above 30% in most of the opinion polls, which is huge for a party that is barely 12 months old. So I think there is a huge opportunity for Reform UK to continue growing in local government over the next few years, in by-elections over the next few years, and by that time we will have a general election, and hopefully, as a lot of the opinion polls are currently showing, it could be the next government party. So that would be absolutely huge for us. But the establishment really don't want us to succeed. So the fight is, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The fight is always on. And for those who work for Reform, who represent Reform in office, it really isn't a job. It really isn't. How do you say? It's certainly not an everyday political role. It really does become a way of life. And we have some very, very dedicated people who are elected to represent us and who work behind the scenes for us. And we are growing by the day, by the hour even. We're the second largest political party in the United Kingdom by members. And we really do have the momentum behind us. And I think something very, very interesting is happening in British politics. There is a big realignment happening, and Reform UK is right at the centre of that.
Do you personally trust or do you see them as a tool used to influence public opinion rather than reflect it?
I think in some ways it does reflect public opinion. I think the opinion polls are often wrong. If the opinion polls were right all of the time, then President Trump wouldn't have won in 2016, and Britain would still be in the European Union. So the opinion polls do get it wrong occasionally. I think in the UK we rely on opinion polls more than we probably should. I think opinion polls serve a use to show the momentum behind a party. In terms of Reform UK, I think they're probably underestimating how popular we are. I mean, we've seen in the United States a lot of people who vote for President Trump won't interact with the pollsters. They won't interact with the opinion polls. So I think they possibly do underestimate the momentum behind us. But I think they're a useful tool to use. But I think opinion polls in general should be taken with more than just a pinch of salt. It should be taken with a huge cellar of salt, because I just think you've got to be very skeptical when it comes to that. We can't believe the hype, but at the same time, we've got to be very careful at opinion polls actually underestimating how popular Reform UK, how popular a certain policy is with the general public.
And finally, what can you tell us about the elections that were held on May 1st in the UK?
Oh, I mean, absolutely huge. They are some of the biggest results that we have seen. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't think we could have predicted, even in our wildest dreams, to come out with the number of council seats and the number of councils in our control that we have come out with. I think, like I say, the early opinion polls were showing round about 400 to 450 seats. Nigel Farage and Reform UK's senior team were saying that 500 to 600 would be a good night. We ended up, as I said earlier, with 677 council seats. We now have 10 councils in our control, up from 0. We also have a further, I think it is 7, maybe 10 actually, that are in no overall control. I think 7 are where Reform UK is the biggest, or is certainly a majority party. So there is a huge opportunity now for Reform UK to really take the fight to local government. We have a plan for local government to audit every single council that we control. There is so much wasteful spending in councils. For example, you have on one council in Leicestershire, you have 15 people working on delivering net zero plans for the council. I mean, that is utter nonsense. And then you've got all of the DEI woke nonsense being contracted out to appalling groups like Stonewall, who want to destroy family values in the United Kingdom and beyond, actually. So there is a lot of wasteful spending. We want to get people back in the office. We want to get people back working in council buildings because that way they're more productive. We want to make council tax value for money again. We have so many potholes in the UK on local authority controlled roads that when people pay their council tax, they deserve potholes to be filled in. They deserve the roads to be to a good standard. So we have a big plan for local government. We are in control of a lot of councils. Don't forget elections were cancelled for 5.5 million people up and down the country in places like Norfolk, Essex, Suffolk, Thurrock. And those were councils that were really strong areas for Reform UK. So that the two major parties, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, worked together to cancel the vote for 5.5 million people in areas that would have inevitably voted very strongly for reform. And I think the momentum is behind us. And whether they cancel elections or whether they try and stop us from gaining momentum by telling lies about us, the general public can see through that. The general public can see through the mainstream media nonsense, and the general public can really see that Reform UK stands for something which has not been talked about for a long time in British politics, which is being proud to be British, which is being proud of our nation, which is believing in low taxes and believing in championing British business and British industry. We want to reindustrialise Britain if we get into power. Obviously, we're trying to do that on a small scale with councils by encouraging direct investment into those areas. We have two fantastic mayors in the north of England, in Greater Lincolnshire and in Hull and East Yorkshire. We have a big, bold plan for both of those areas, ranging from big infrastructure projects to working to really solve some fairly serious transport gaps in those areas. And I think the mood is changing in the country. People want change. People are fed up of the same old two-party system of the red team against the blue team. And there really is a political revolution going on where a third party could seriously go from being pretty much nothing in parliamentary terms at one general election in 3 or 4 years' time, whenever the next general election may be, that Reform UK really could be the government party. And I think people are starting to believe that. The 1st of May was a big, big step forward. We threw everything at those local elections. We lost the North Tyneside mayoralty by just 400 votes, Doncaster mayoralty by 600. We lost Bristol, which is one of the west of England, rather, which includes Bristol, which is one of the most left-wing parts of the United Kingdom, by just a few thousand votes, 5,000, I think it was. Despite being predicted to come fourth, we came second by a fairly narrow margin for a mayoralty. So I think the people are really waking up and people really are getting behind Reform UK, what Reform UK stands for, what Nigel Farage stands for and has stood for the last 30 years. And people talk about the Conservative Party reinventing themselves. People don't trust the Conservative Party anymore. People don't trust the Labour Party anymore. People do want change. And last week we saw that. We saw us hit over 30% of vote share across all council areas, across all elections. And we really have seen the first step in what I think is going to be a very, very big change in British politics.
Mr. Thoburn, thank you so much for joining me today and good luck.
Thank you very much.